Hello, I'm Nick Beafor, and this is my 5th vlog entry for Dr. Alan Reed's book, The Smartphone Paradox. So within this chapter, which is titled Outsourcing Memory, Reed explores how smartphones are transforming not just what we remember, but how we remember certain things. So like my previous videos or vlogs for this class, I'll first summarize a chapter, then reflect on this chapter and how it applies to my daily life, and I'll finally connect it to other readings and different concepts that we have done in this class. So within this chapter, Reed starts off with the central argument of how smartphones are becoming external memory systems within us. This means we are offloading facts such as to-do lists and even sometimes remembering people's birthdays, which can go onto our phones, and that is overall changing the role of human memory in everyday life. So to start this off, Reed introduces the concept of transactive memory, which is originally a theory about how people in groups, like couples or coworkers, divide the labor of remembering things up. But now, instead of relying on other people, we're turning up to our phones for all this assistance. In this chapter, Reed writes, smartphones have become both the filing cabinet and the office assistant for us. This means they hold everything from the passwords to the playlist to directions even, and we use this to trust them to do what things can do better than our brains overall. But this just isn't a convenience for us. So Reed in this chapter also warns us that we may be losing something important than the process overall. By outsourcing memory to our devices, we are also weakening the cognitive muscle that helps us from deep, lasting memories. He describes how real memory takes effort and it requires attention, encoding, and retrieval. But when we just Google something on the internet, pretty much, we shortcut that entire process up. Within this chapter, Reed also brings up the Google effect, which is what I kind of just mentioned, which is the overall tendency for us to forget information that we know and we could just look it up later in a quicker convenience. Reed references studies from this showing that people remember where to find information better than the information itself. So it's basically the shortcut mention I had. For example, from this, we are more likely to remember which app a file is stored in than what the file actually says. Finally, within this chapter, it ends with the proactive question, what happens when the machine we rely on for memory fails? If we've offloaded too much, and are we even capable of functioning without it, pretty much? So this whole chapter really hit home for me, to be honest. I really was intrigued to see what Dr. Reed really wrote for this chapter. I really enjoyed the last few chapters that I've read within this book. But this one was a little bit different, and I kind of really liked it more than most of the other chapters as well. There are moments within this chapter I'll be reflecting on myself looking something up, taking the shortcut route, like looking up a historical date or even a food recipe for me cooking, and 5 minutes later I already forgotten it because I know I could just search it up again, pretty much. I also rely on using notes and reminders within my phone way too much. If I do not write something down on my phone, I know I'll probably forget about it, which normally I am a type of person to forget a lot of things. I have a kind of a comprehension issue some of the times, so learning to comprehend things has really been tough. I did used to start out writing stuff down, even if I was studying for like a test and whatnot. I would always have like a planner with me when I was in like middle school, and I had to write stuff down pretty much. Nowadays, since I have my phone, I do it on my phone, so it kind of takes away that sensation of me doing that. So it really is something that has really changed my life in the way I plan things and not only look things up as well. In one part of this book, however, Reed states memory offloading changes not just what we think we remember, but how we pay attention in the first place. This quote actually made me really think about how I've noticed some things that I've had experience in the past, and sometimes when I read articles or watch videos within a weird sense of detachment, I just feel like I'm scanning just for the main points pretty much, and I could just bookmark the video or that main point and come back to it later. So I feel like technology overall is really trying to help. It feels like it's trying to help us as humans, take shortcut routes, trying to get to the main points. But we're basically missing those main points and the important details from all that stuff. So like what I just mentioned here earlier, if I watch a video on something important for like a class, sometimes they'll just highlight the main points and I'll just forget the details. Not It'll just give me the definition and like the word for it. Sometimes it may not even say that. It may just be the word. So I truly think what technology is doing now and not giving us information from that has really been hurtful to us, I feel. But the truth is, I rarely sometimes go back to all this. So I will say some of the times I do, whenever I look stuff up or do something, I do tend to forget it pretty quickly. So, but if that's the case, I rarely go back to what I just looked up. And it's basically the overall skill of not just me, but maybe others. Our brains have been trained to skim things over rather than engage ourselves within something. So that's kind of something that I really thought about, and it made me reflect on how basically I studied before using smartphones as well, because what I just mentioned, I used to write things down a lot. Now, since we have computers and using our phones, it makes me memorize a lot of things in a shorter time frame pretty much. And now since cloud drives and even search bars are now available to us, it just makes the search process a lot more convenient, what it feels like to us convenient. It just really takes away the memorization that we really do have and what we had in the past. So that's kind of something I really reflected on within this chapter. I really think out of all the chapters I've read in this book, this has really been the one that has kind of like hit home for me, I would say. So connections within this chapter. So this chapter connects directly within the themes of what we've been discussing throughout this whole course, especially when it comes to digital dependency and cognitive offloadings. It aligns closely with ideas we saw in chapter 4 about around instant gratification and on-demand culture, just like what we expected entertainment instantly, and we now expect knowledge to be instant and available to us pretty much, a very quick search for everything. This also ties into another concept that we learned in chapter 4 on attention economy, which we discussed earlier. If our memory is weakened because we're not fully engaged in the content, it's because we're multitasking or half scrolling, I should say, then the platforms such as Instagram or TikTok actually benefit from this. They don't want us to remember content really deeply. They want us to just keep scrolling and doom scroll pretty much. I've used that in a couple of vlogs in the past before, and I feel like doom scroll is kind of like the word for this social media or new media type dependency for us humans. We just doom scroll a lot on social media. However, within this chapter, it made me reflect on Marshall McLuhan's text and the text written by Nicholas Carr on The Medium is the Message, which is one of Marshall McLuhan's famous statements within that. It's just as important, if not more important, than the content when it really delivers. So the idea here is perfect about it. Reed isn't just talking to us about what we use our smartphones for, like storing phone numbers or reminders, but basically how we structure our smartphones overall, and which changes our cognitive behavior. And our brains adapt to this tool And the way I connected this to McLuhan is he argued that new technologies extend our senses, but they also amputate old capabilities that we've had. Within this case, though, smartphones extend our memory but seem to weaken our natural ability to retain and recall our information. That trade off that we have, or enhancement versus erosion, we can call it. This is what Reed is basically pointing to within this chapter, and basically the whole media idea overall within this whole book, I'd say. So, to wrap things up within chapter 5 of the smartphone paradox, it's really took a deep dive into our relationship within our technology and how our memory is evolving within the digital age. Reed in this chapter isn't just telling us to stop using our smartphones. I don't think he's really telling us that at all. Like, I feel like smartphones are going to be something dependent for us in the future, but Reed is basically telling us this as a warning to us and just to be mindful of what could come within the future. When we outsource our memory too much, we become more passive consumers pretty much of the information that we take in, and instead of that, we're not becoming active learners within this phrase. This chapter also made me think about reclaiming some of the cognitive controls I had, maybe just intentionally memorizing key things or practicing attention pretty much throughout my whole my life, basically, like what I had to originally go back to, such as journaling and reading without any distractions. So basically just getting like a notebook, basically just getting that out. And even if it's not a notebook, you can even take like a sticky note. If you're reading a book that you have, take a sticky note and write something down. It'll make you memorize things a lot better than just writing it down on a piece of technology. And this whole book, or chapter I should say, is a reminder that smartphones are powerful tools, but they shouldn't be the only place where our lives live and thoughts live throughout our brains. And we should really consider different types of tools that aren't technology based for our memorization. So overall, this chapter was great, and I'm looking forward to be reading the next chapter.